Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mapocolops Game Awards 2024 expansion, The Missing Pieces. We are excited to unveil and release something that we have been working tirelessly on over here at the Mapocolops Game Studios. Our team has achieved something that is unprecedented in the industry, a level of graphical detail previously yet unseen. If you take a look between this comparison across the Mapocolops Game Awards 2024 and the Mapocolops Game Awards 2024 expansion, The Missing Pieces, you'll see the difference, and you will be absolutely in awe of what we've been able to achieve in an industry first. Thank you so much for joining us for the grand debut of the expansion to the Mapocolops Game Awards 2024, and I hope you enjoy.
My name is Alan Wake, and I'm stuck here, presenting awards in the dark place. I can't get out. To the left of me is a creature, and a future I do not understand. And to the right of me, something completely unknown. I just have to keep presenting awards until I can finally escape this place.
I'm here to talk about expansions to old horizons and looking ahead to things that can reshape, reform, and reimagine previously existing things. We're looking at expansions in regards to DLC, downloadable content, the thing that can persist and continue after a game releases. We're going to go through some of the expansions and downloadable content that we experienced in the year of 2024, and it feels suitable to include it as an expansion to the Mapocolops Game Awards. There was some expansion content that was actually included in the original video because it was related to full playthroughs. For example, Phantom Liberty was something that was just treated as an all-encompassing element of the Cyberpunk playthrough, but it was also an expansion, and it was a pretty notable one as well. There's also games like Final Fantasy XIV that I streamed on the channel, and my live streaming and my pre-recorded videos, they don't tend to cross over very much, and we don't draw much attention to it, and it didn't get any attention in the 2023 Game Awards. It seems I've been pulled here to rectify that, to make up for a 2023 mistake, and to implement this into 2024, we're going to talk about our favorite expansions. Not necessarily ranking them, because it's not that type of experience. We're just going to be able to talk about it and to acknowledge their existence, because we played Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. We played Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood and Shadowbringers, most of all of Stormblood and its post-release patches, and Shadowbringers we have yet to return in the middle of those post-release patches, and we will be returning very soon. We also did Ghost of Tsushima, the Iki Island DLC. There was Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, which is an expansion to the base game as well. So you really have to look at all of these experiences and talk about them in their entirety. And we're mostly here because I did want to address and talk about Final Fantasy XIV. Stormblood and Shadowbringers are just exceptional pieces of content and storytelling, whether it be how the characters interact with each other and just that world that we're in. Final Fantasy XIV is a game that just continues to get better and better and better as you progress through those expansions and that DLC content. And it was interesting because Stormblood was considered a outlier, like sort of the ugly duckling of the expansions, because everyone puts Heaven's Ward and Shadowbringers on these giant pedestals that Stormblood kind of falls to the wayside. And I didn't feel that at all. Stormblood, I think, is better than Heaven's Ward, and it's just a continuous momentum. I adored that experience and what we got to learn about a whole different region of the world. It was just fantastic. I truly adored Stormblood, and then rode that wave right into Shadowbringers, which just flips the entire experience right on its head. I'm so excited to jump back into Final Fantasy XIV, and I wanted to use this opportunity as a check-in to acknowledge Final Fantasy XIV, what we've done with it, and how we're going to return. I did a Dark Knight storyline video that's been posted on the channel. That was my first bit of Final Fantasy XIV content that was actually separate from live streaming. And that's a really fun idea because you get to really slim something down to just the essence of what it is instead of having a lot of the live streaming fluff and low points. You get to just encapsulate the full storyline of a job in Final Fantasy XIV. And that was very, very fun. It makes sense that we got to do Dark Knight after Shadowbringers, and while we're working through it, we got to see all of the full storyline. And after completing the main scenario of Shadowbringers, we could finish the Dark Knight storyline properly. And it was just really, really fun. I think that was probably the best job or quest line according to a lot of people. So we will certainly be checking out others over time, but I think that one might be the main appeal. So if you haven't seen it and you weren't aware that I posted it, it is there. So please go and check it out. And I hope you're excited for the return to Final Fantasy XIV. And on the subject of Final Fantasy XIV, we can also talk about Final Fantasy XVI. That was another story that got an expansion. It got a couple of stories, Echoes of the Fallen and The Rising Tide. And just like Final Fantasy XVI and Alan Wake 2, these are the DLC expansions to our 2023 lineup. Games that get a continuation into the following year, and here's a category for it. So those parts of the story don't go unnoticed. Echoes of the Fallen was an amazing experience, and so was The Rising Tide. I think both of them were some really notable expansions to the Final Fantasy XVI storyline, and it's just more of that world to play in. And I already really, really loved Final Fantasy XVI, and it was very close to being my game of the year for big reasons. Final Fantasy is very important to me, but Alan Wake 2 truly swept the rest off of their feet. But again, just bringing attention to some really incredible Final Fantasy related expansions we got in 2024 without going into specific story spoiler details, because those are very story heavy games and there's a lot to talk about that can give things away. And I know that Final Fantasy is a video game series on this channel that a lot of people have yet to dive into, especially with there's so many numbered titles and people playing different ones. But I do want to say Echoes of the Fallen and Rising Tide was just so much fun. Wanted to acknowledge that. More history in relation to Clive and the icons and, of course, the fallen society that came before. And it was just a little taste of the richness of that world. I wish that we could continue to just go deeper and deeper. I think they could utilize this world and setting of Final Fantasy 16 often and give us even more content if they truly wanted to. I think they might move on, but at least we got an expansion with a couple of new stories. I can be grateful for that. And like I mentioned, alongside Final Fantasy 16, Alan Wake 2, of course. There was Night Springs and there was the Lake House DLC. Night Springs was a little more episodic. You had 3 specific characters in the Remedyverse that you got to play as and experience. And I think the 3rd episode, Time Breaker, with our kind of quantum break illusions there, was very, very enjoyable. It motivated me. Well, I guess maybe I won't say motivated because I haven't played it yet, but it did really, really excite me for when I do get to Quantum Break and can add that one into the mix. Of course, last year we got to play Max Payne 2, and in 2025 we played Max Payne 3, so we're still working through this series. I'm not dropping anything just yet. We have FBC Firebreak coming out at some point this year, which I would like to check out, and of course, Quantum Break. And then there's the Max Payne remakes. Whatever comes next from Remedy, I will be sure to experience. Control 2 is going to be a very, very exciting time. But on the subject of Night Springs and the Lake House, they were really, really fun. The Lake House was maybe shorter than I expected, but it was enjoyable. We got to play as another agent, Estevez of the FBC, and it was references to the first game, and the paintings, the horror element of paintings was really, really fun. I don't want to go into more detail than that, but Lake House was just so much fun. We got new story, we got new songs, and that was a big one as well. And just seeing these stories that could potentially be written and shaped by Alan Wake while he's churning out all of his content, I think was really incredible as well. So Final Fantasy 16 and Alan Wake 2, some pretty big games from the 2023 year. We also got to experience some pretty great additions to those worlds in 2024. Another one that has probably fallen out of a lot of everyone's memory is God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok came out in 2022, and like Elden Ring, in 2024, or at least kind of at the very, very end of 2023 going into 2024, there was a DLC. There was a free addition to that game called Valhalla. And I played that on the channel right at the end of 2023, enough to the point where it was not included in that year's Game Awards. It pushes over into 2024. So let's talk about that as well, because that also gets added onto the list. There was a free addition to the Ragnarok storyline that continued past that game. And that was really fun. It was taking an already personal, emotional, and introspective journey for Kratos and diving even deeper in a really fascinating way. I like what he is faced with and what he has to work through, and the way that they developed that little additional piece of content was very nice. They made it a roguelike, similar to how in the 2018 game you did have the realm that you could travel to, and you could, go in and get cool loot and do as much as you wanted. But this time it was actually a story-specific moment, and it had characters from the base game, of course, so it was still continuing. It was a nice epilogue, I think, for Kratos' character in Ragnarok. So I did want to acknowledge that one as well, because while we did speak about Ragnarok, of course, in the 2022 Game Awards video, Valhalla was in this pocket between 2023 and 2024 where I'm like, where do we end up putting this? Too late for 2023, but now we can talk about it well over a year later since we played it. It's like almost been a year and a half. So it's very delayed acknowledgement, but this is how the yearly Game Awards works. Valhalla was super fun. I don't know who is still yet to get around to experiencing it. That's probably the oldest game that and Ghost of Tsushima are sort of the oldest pre-recorded Let's Plays to talk about that kind of story content. But even then, I know that Ragnarok was a PlayStation exclusive alongside Ghost of Tsushima that have only recently seen PC releases. So there's still people working their way through those stories. So surface level information, I know, but again, just an acknowledgement of how fun that was to go through. Talking about Ghost of Tsushima, there was the Iki Island DLC, and I explained in the 2024 Game Awards that I sort of encapsulate that all within the same year. We did take a break, play Iki Island in the year of 2025, but it got to expand on Jin's journey and the way that it serves the main narrative while also forming a new one with a new faction of the Mongols and having a very, very personal journey for Jin. Great stuff. Kratos and Jin both going through and working through their own stuff in very, very different ways. I think that PlayStation games tend to have a little bit of a poetry in how they approach their cinematic storytelling. So talking about them back to back is quite funny. But Jin working through traumas of his past in relation to his father, fond memories of his mother, how his family history influences the course of the Iki Island DLC was amazing to me. And I loved that it wasn't some sort of throwaway addition to the game of, oh, here's, you could do more stuff and it's fun. It was a heartfelt and meaningful expansion to the already really amazing Ghost of Tsushima narrative. So Iki Island was a really, really fun time. And again, if you haven't got around to seeing that yet, maybe it hasn't even come your way on the algorithm because we did take a break from the Let's Play. I have played and finished the Iki Island DLC in like 5 episodes, and it was super fun. So God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, those PlayStation exclusives got some really nice content. Of course, Valhalla was a nice surprise. It was just like a free shadow drop, essentially. And Iki Island was a paid DLC. Both of them really amazing. I think Iki Island worth it for being a paid DLC, for sure, because it was longer. I think Valhalla has a lot of replayability because it's a roguelike genre. But Iki Island was just really, really impressive for me. And at the end here, we can talk about the DLC expansions that we spoke about in the main video, Shadow of the Erdtree and Phantom Liberty. Of course, they got nominated in their own categories, and they were exceptional expansions in their own right. That I think what's amazing about Shadow of the Erdtree and Phantom Liberty is you could kind of play them as their own games. Like if that was the game, if that was the story, these smaller scale ones that aren't as massive as the base games that they came from, they're still really exceptional standalone experiences. You can go into that world of Phantom Liberty and just start it immediately. I think the game even allows you, when you start a new game, to be able to start Phantom Liberty immediately. You can kind of skip some stuff and be at an appropriate level, I think. And it kind of makes sense. Like you could just dive into the Phantom Liberty expansion with the knowledge of base level knowledge of who you are and go and experience that story. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it works really well, weaved into the main narrative, but that's also how I experienced it, and I haven't experienced it in a different way. I do think that you could. I just wouldn't recommend it. But the characters that were added to that game, having more sort of like focus on here's your next celebrity, and we had Idris Elba. So Idris Elba and Keanu Reeves together was really amazing. Obviously, Keanu Reeves took a little bit more of a back seat in the Phantom Liberty expansion because we had more of a focus on Songbird and Solomon Reed. And I think that was a good idea how that was worked into the story to not have it be too crowded with voices in your head and new characters. It gave them time to breathe. I think that was truly an exceptional moment for CD Projekt Red as well to deliver on Phantom Liberty, because musically, visually, aesthetically, narratively, it was just nailing all of those points. It was a great little way to address and acknowledge how the base game launched and then come out swinging with that expansion. Being able to see the end credits sequence and like the musical element of Phantom Liberty I really, really enjoyed, because again, it's like that Bond thriller. You've even got more of base game characters coming in and being given more to do. Like Mr. Hands got a recast and a full like redoing of his character. Redoing, that's a good word. He was completely redone, and he was the fixer of Dogtown. Even like you've got Grimes' Lizzie Wizzy character doing a exceptional musical performance, and this is the year where that copyright will come into play with that music. I think the Phantom Liberty episode that music features in will get struck down by the copyright law at some point this year, I believe. I think so. So enjoy it while it lasts. But it was truly an exceptional performance, and like Kurt Hansen, just like this sort of prominent figure for us, obviously President Myers. There was so many elements. And I think what I really liked with Phantom Liberty as well is the personal narrative and connection to V. And that it's giving you another path and another sort of shiny carrot being dangled in your face of here's some hope. And if you've played it, you know how that progression path goes. If you haven't, it's truly worth experiencing, but it just adds so much to that Cyberpunk game as a whole. So Phantom Liberty was definitely, I think, my favorite DLC and expansion that I've got to play on the channel, followed by Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. And then, of course, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. This DLC expansion that stands on its own. You can't play it on its own. You do need the original game. You need to get to a certain point. It's like the progression to get into Shadow of the Erdtree is very interesting. I'd say it's easier to get into Phantom Liberty than it is to get into Shadow of the Erdtree, because you have to defeat a really tough boss in order to access Shadow of the Erdtree. But once you get in and you go through that world, it is so worth it. The additions to that game were tremendously enjoyable. We did speak about that quite a lot in terms of art direction and boss fights and moments like that, of course. So we've spoken on Shadow of the Erdtree probably the most. Phantom Liberty didn't get as much acknowledgement in the main video because it was just talking about all of Cyberpunk, whereas obviously Shadow of the Erdtree, that was the specific part of the content that we played in 2024. So that's essentially talking about our DLC and our expansions, some more recent, some a little bit unexpected to talk about in this video. It's actually surprising when you kind of look back, what have I played and when did I play it? I'm like, oh, I've actually got quite a list of DLC and expansion content. And I thought it would be a fun idea to put that as a DLC expansion to the video. Just a fun little meta commentary on expansions. Wasn't it fun? I hope you enjoyed this one just as a little epilogue and something extra. I think DLC expansions are really great when they are intentionally crafted as an additional experience and not something that was always meant to be there and then taken out and sold back to you later. Phantom Liberty and Shadow of the Erdtree are obviously prime examples of that. I'm actually not too sure about Iki Island, whether that was always planned or not. I think that came out around the director's cut, so I'm not sure. Obviously, Final Fantasy XIV, that is an online game. That's an online experience. So that is always going to have these expansions that build on the story until it doesn't. And those just continue to be so enjoyable. I cannot wait for the rest of the Shadowbringers content I have to play through, as well as Endwalker, and then we also have Dawn Trail as well. So always a lot to look forward to. And when we talk about DLC expansions being very intentionally crafted, I think this whole list is really good. I think Final Fantasy 16 had a planned story expansion. I think, again, it's a little bit fuzzy now. I think the expansion pass wasn't something that was a sure thing. It was just like, I hope that we get more content, and we were just kind of waiting for more details. But all of the additional content that we played across the games mentioned here, I think was really well done. There wasn't a single DLC that I was like, I feel like I've wasted my time with this, or it wasn't worth it. I think each of the expansions in their own way, were priced very fairly for what they were and gave us a lot more content to talk about. And it gave us this. It gave us a bonus episode and a little bit more of the Mapocolops Game Awards. And thank you so much for experiencing the free expansion DLC to the Mapocolops Game Awards. And I will see you next time.